listening to the podcast, A Resonant Life, produced by The Time Is Now Productions. I am Mike Thompson, your host and Reflector-in-Chief. In this podcast, we will discuss experiences and insights from living a life devoted to uncovering the authentic self and finding fulfilling purpose from the past, the present, and the future. This podcast is a product of my life and experience, and I'll share my opinions. Opinions between people are various, and we don't all need to hold the same ones. But it is fun to hear the opinions of others as it gives us an opportunity to freshen up our own. If you enjoy and gain insight from listening, please subscribe and share. If you have questions, please email them. And as always, nothing you hear here is a proscription or a prescription. It is a discussion of life and life's internal and external experiences. So let's get to it. And welcome to episode 3 of A Resonant Life podcast. I'm so happy you're listening today. And I hope that we'll be able to uncover some good stuff today. And I want to thank everybody for who sent in comments and feedback, who've helped me out to continue to grow and shape the podcast to make it something that's valuable and useful for all those who listen. And as always, please share and please subscribe. The bigger our circle grows, the richer it will become. And so let's start. So today, here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's a beautiful fall day in Tokyo, where I am. And the leaves have turned colors, and they're falling from the trees, and the wind is blowing, and the leaves are circling into piles and drifts. And there's two ways to look at that. One is the beauty of autumn and nature and the turning of the seasons. And another way to look at it is it's a mess. It's detritus. It's just stuff gathering around that needs to be cleaned up. And I see in this a metaphor for life, really, because as we've discussed previously, there's always two ways to look at everything in our lives. And today I want to discuss a little bit about when we look at things as detritus, as messes, as the things that kind of bog us down, distract us, irritate us, keep us from focusing on the big things in life, happiness, creating happiness around us, peace, and creating an environment which fosters peace. And so it's a matter of looking at your life as you go through your day, and what are you paying attention to? What are you focusing your mind and your attention on? A lot of times we're focusing on what somebody said to us that maybe hurt us or irritated us or distracted us, or what somebody else did that wasn't productive or contributing or was maybe destructive. The little unhappinesses, the little irritations, these are the things we tend to focus a lot of our time and attention on. Our minds tend to gravitate towards these things. And in a sense, then, this is the detritus. This is the blowing, piling leaves of our lives. But if we can kind of turn that around, we recognize that these are actually inconsequential things in our lives, inconsequential moments or interruptions. And that if we stay focused on the bigger picture, if we stay focused on the more overriding effort towards generating happiness in our lives and the lives of those around us, generating positivity, trying to make things better, then these small irritations, these hurts, these wounds, these distractions, they become inconsequential in our minds as well. And if we can see them as inconsequential, then indeed they no longer bog us down, distract us, or take us away from the real project of our lives. So think of it all as emotional clutter. And why is it that we get distracted by this emotional clutter? Well, again, it's our ego always looking for praise and positivity and fending off hurts and wounds and threats. Buddhism and Buddhist practice, sort of from a larger perspective, is really a way of life. It's a way of thinking. It's, in essence, mind hacking. And in this instance, what we're doing is, our DNA, we're animals, actually, and our DNA is such that we have the drives to survive, to procreate, and to go on, and to belong. And so our DNA wants us to belong and wants to know where we fit in. This is sort of a primal thing. It's not conscious, but our very sophisticated conscious minds still respond to these DNA cues because the DNA sets off biochemical and hormonal responses, and our bodies and brains are wired to respond to these things, and our conscious minds then pick up on it and act. Now, this isn't scientific at all, but I'm trying to just describe how our natures tend to control us more than we think. And that the efforts of living an authentic life is really about overriding the nature and instead doing the opposite of what our DNA is telling us to do. And in doing the opposite, that opposite is uncovering the authentic self and experiencing happiness and joy and fulfillment, and helping others to experience that same joy and fulfillment. So, back to the emotional clutter. That's us reacting, trying to find our place in the pecking order, trying to find where we fit in the pack, in the tribe. So we're driven to sort of know who's above and who's below. And all this is our brains taking in the information around us, what people are saying, and our egos might be hurt or might be pumped up, whatever. But all this is going on in the background, and it's our job to hack that system and to override it. So, imagine this pile of leaves, beautiful colors, but still a pile of leaves, something that needs to be raked or swept up eventually, at least if it's in your yard or on your stoop or on your terrace, wherever it might be. And so we need to do the same thing with our minds. We need to sweep all this stuff up, all this emotional clutter. We need to sweep it up and sort of put it in the dustbin. And so in the process of mentally sweeping it all up, we're acknowledging it. We're acknowledging that we had responses to it. We had irritations. We had hurts and wounds. And we had little lifts of our ego. And in acknowledging it, we take away the power of it, at least in that moment. And in that moment, we can consciously again turn our attention and our minds to looking out at the same people and situations who created this emotional clutter, or at least caused us to create this emotional clutter. We can look out at them and see them differently. We can look out at them and seeing people who are trying to be happy and who probably aren't intentionally trying to hurt or insult or cause irritation. Like us, they are trying to be happy and doing the best that they can. And in that moment of commonality, if we can meditate on that for a bit and hold that and share that commonality, then compassion will bloom like a flower in our hearts and minds. And so the hurts that might have been caused really do become inconsequential, because what's more important is that person across from us who is pursuing the same project, being happy. The difference between us is we're using some philosophy, we're using some mind hacks and tricks, we're using some actions of body, speech, and mind to do it differently and to do the pursuit of happiness in a way that doesn't cause others unhappiness. That's sort of the core thrust of how to handle the emotional clutter of our lives, these piles of leaves. It's not easy. Nothing is ever easy. Changing behavior is not easy. Changing outlook is not easy. We've become hardwired through the courses of our lives and our habits and our social milieu and our cultures, our values, our ethics. All these things get hardwired. That's why in practice, in our daily lives, minute by minute, moment by moment, it's being mindful and aware. And if we're not, using the sense of irritation, learning to use the sense of irritation or hurt or little ego boosty kind of stuff, to use those moments to stop and step back and see what those are pointing to. So in a sense, it's living a life of constant meditation. That's the project. Meditation isn't always about just sitting still and clearing the mind of everything. Really, we're living in a world of stimulation. And in our social lives, we're constantly being stimulated. And so that's the fuel, that's the stuff that we get to shape our life with. And if we're not conscious and are just reacting, then in a sense we're not in control of our lives at all, no matter how much we might want to control our lives. So, as we have a pile of leaves on our stoop, our terrace, our yard, wherever it is, we consciously sweep it up and we throw it in the dustbin. So it is with emotional clutter. Sweeping it up, putting it in the dustbin, using it as the triggers to help us step back and look at life more objectively. And to use that objectivity, that moment outside of involvement, to see others and to connect with them through the commonality of what we share, which, at the very least, is the effort to be happy in all aspects of our lives. Many people live a life where the world is zero-sum, where if someone else has, they don't. If they have, others can't have, they must keep. But truly, there is abundance. And it's really a matter of opening your heart and mind to that way of looking at things. And the path to doing that is using everything in your life as a trigger to say, oh, okay, I'm reacting to this situation. It might be hurt, it might be happiness, it might be praise, it might be irritation. Using that, stepping back from it, stepping outside of it, taking the clothes of that emotional reaction off and looking at it and seeing how it affected you, and then realizing that you can sweep that up, put it in the dustbin, and there you are, unburdened, unhindered, and awake in a way where you can look out and see how you might be a cause of happiness for the person who caused you the irritation. How you might add positivity to a situation that was potentially negative, which is no longer negative because you're not reacting to it negatively. And the same is for positivity. If your ego is responding to praise in a way that's a little bit egocentric, use that and channel it back to the person opposite you. Use every situation to create moments and opportunities for everybody to have a moment of happiness and harmony. Being harmonious with others is an enormous cause of joy and peace. There's little room for argument and disagreement and assertion of ego one over the other if we're in harmony. And since you're listening to this podcast, you must have some interest in doing that, in being that vehicle, in being that agent of harmony. And in doing so, you're able to clean up your own emotional clutter, and you're able to help others find an opportunity to clear up their own emotional clutter as well. And the harmony becomes 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. It becomes your family. It becomes a harmonious work group. It becomes a harmonious neighborhood, a harmonious community. This is all big thinking. We live in a world where there's always going to be disagreement. There's always going to be people who might be driven by hate or want or pain or anger. And we're not going to be able to change them necessarily, but we can change ourselves and how we react to them. And how we react to them is determined by whether or not we're going to allow emotional clutter to accumulate, or if we're going to rather clean it up, learn from it, and use it as a catalyst to step outside of ourselves and help others. And just model the behavior and the attitude of harmony and happiness. The paradox of happiness is, if we devote our energies and attentions to the happiness of others, we ourselves can become deeply and abidingly happy. So thank you for listening. Today's talk was a little bit wide-ranging, but it's the project that we're on, and there's so many ways to sort of approach it and look at it, turn it over, examine it, and find new techniques and strategies for learning about ourselves and using what we learn to then help others. And all of that project are steps on the path to uncovering the authentic self and creating a world of peace and happiness and harmony. Thank you so very much for listening today. Please subscribe, please share, and please Listen again next week. Thank you so much.